It is a question the country's been asking for a while now. When will the Supreme Court issue its decision on abortion rights?
Overturn Roe! Hell no! Overturn Roe! Hell no! Overturn Roe!
Hell no!
Overturn Roe!
Hell no! Hell no! Hell no! Hell no! Today, the lives of millions of people are in the hands of these so-called justices. In a world without Roe, this is what it looks like. This is our reality for millions of women across the world. That's right. In a post-Roe world, people will die. I could die.
I've lost my sense of security, all because a group of people, starting with number 45 and his ally, Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter, Shay, to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen.
Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is episode number 107 on June 23rd, 2022. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the show, and I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California. This week, we have been on edge, waiting for the Supreme Court decision on women's right to abortion in this country. Today's RNL Revolution Nothing Less show will again feature the actions of RiseUp4AbortionRights, who have acted with courage, conviction, and bold determination, calling on the masses of people in this country to take to the streets to stop this stealing of a fundamental constitutional right of women to be in control of their futures, their bodies, their right to decide whether and when to bear a child. It's all on the line now. This will be a major feature of today's RNL Revolution Nothing Less program. And then later in today's episode, Annie Day of the National Revolution Tour will speak to the outrageous, harmful, and ridiculous charge of cult against the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian and the Revcoms. Stay with us for this. Because in a moment like this, when so much of the future hangs in the balance, when this very future is foreboding and existential on so many fronts, it really matters that there is a force, there is a leadership, there is a way out of this madness. It is not a surprise, but it is an outrage that at a moment like this, there are those who would do the work of the rulers of this system and their enforcers by slandering, viciously attacking those who have taken the responsibility to organize and to fight for a way forward. This is the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, and we take our name from Bob Avakian's landmark talk in 2012, BA Speaks, Revolution Nothing Less. We promote and apply the extraordinary and path-breaking work which he has done, which is nothing less than developing over decades now the framework for human emancipation, for a way forward out of the horror and madness of today's world. Look, to shoulder that responsibility, to not give up on the possibility of revolution when so many others have, and to develop a scientific approach so that a new and radically different society that could lead to the liberation of all humanity all over the world, that takes tremendous integrity, sacrifice, and risk. It is despicable that some would do the work of the oppressors and lie and work to isolate and tear such a person and the movement he leads down. So stay with us for this important commentary from Annie Day later in today's RNL show. And we're going to begin with a new sharp piece from Bob Avakian just published on our website, revcom.us, titled, "A Serious Fight Against Injustice, Not a Petty Hustle for Ownership."
A serious fight against injustice, not a petty hustle for ownership, by Bob Avakian. Today, there are some people and groups that identify as progressive or woke, but have become so influenced by capitalist notions of property relations that they actually believe that they own the fight against injustice in the public spaces, and even whole cities and areas, where this fight needs to be waged. This has come up, for example, in the fight waged by RiseUp4AbortionRights.org to prevent the fascist majority on the Supreme Court from ripping away the right to abortion by overturning Roe v. Wade. Rise Up has consistently sought to build the broadest possible unity, uniting all who can be united in this fight. Unfortunately, however, some of these would-be owners, instead of doing what they should be doing, enthusiastically welcoming, actively joining in, and calling on others to become part of the determined fight waged by Rise Up to defend the right to abortion, have instead attacked Rise Up because it did not ask permission to come into their space in waging this fight. Well, it is necessary to disabuse these people of their delusions. They do not own the fight against injustice, nor do they own any of these public spaces, let alone whole cities or areas. If anybody owns this property now, it is the ruling class of this capitalist imperialist system, which, under this system, has dominion and exercises dictatorship over society as a whole. Anyone, any group, any movement seeking to fight against the injustices perpetrated by this system should never ask the permission of this ruling class to wage this fight, or allow this ruling class to dictate how, on what grounds, this fight should be waged. And, as it would be terribly wrong to seek this kind of permission from the ruling class, it would be ridiculous to think that permission should be asked of opportunists seeking to impose on reality their petty delusions of ownership. Instead of standing on the sidelines, or worse yet, attacking Rise Up for Abortion Rights, everyone who recognizes the importance of defending the fundamental right to abortion should be actively joining with Rise Up in determined, non-violent resistance to prevent this right from being ripped away. And all those who are disgusted with capitalist relations of ownership and the exploitation and oppression that is built into these relations, as well as the putrid ideas and culture that go along with this, should become part of the movement for a revolution to sweep away this system of capitalism imperialism, to do away with all the terrible and needless suffering it imposes, not just on masses of people in this country, but on the masses of humanity as a whole, including the half of humanity that is female.
This week, I'm going to speak frankly about the stakes involved in the challenge to get into, to spread, and to apply the guide for this rare moment in history that was published last week on our website, revcom.us, titled Organizing for an Actual Revolution, 7 Key Points. This piece begins this way. Everyone who can't stand this world the way it is needs to be challenged to be part of the revolution that is the way out of this madness, end quote. The 7 key points are a concentration of the analysis, the principles, and the strategy, the roadmap that Bob Avakian has put forward in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. 2 futures concentrated in that 6-word title, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. Late last night, I watched the 4th day of testimony from the January 6th congressional hearings. I'm going to speak here of one aspect of that hearing to argue why you need to get into Organizing for an Actual Revolution, 7 key points, and take them up and spread them everywhere and be a part of applying them. So last night I watched this 4th day of testimony from the January 6th hearings, and I took serious note of the testimony of the arch-conservative Speaker of the House of Representatives in Arizona, Rusty Bowers, as well as that of the deeply conservative Secretary of State of Georgia, Brad Raffensperger. Both of these officials were responsible for ensuring that the elections in their respective states were fair, with the votes accurately tabulated. They each supported and voted for Trump themselves. Both sought to reason with Trump and his henchmen, arguing that Trump lost the election and that his schemes to overturn the election were based on falsehoods. Listen to Rusty Bowers, who, after he testified to the far-fetched illegal ways he was pressured by Trump to convene the Arizona state legislature to appoint illegitimate electors who would vote for Trump, when the law is that electors should represent who actually won the Arizona vote, which was Biden. These threats were not just political strong-arming, but Rusty Bowers said that every weekend he and his wife face groups who come by their home with
video panel trucks with videos of me proclaiming me to be a pedophile and a pervert and a corrupt and politician, and blaring loudspeakers in my neighborhood. I don't know if I should name groups, but there was one gentleman that had the 3 bars on his chest, and he had a pistol and was threatening my neighbor, not with the pistol, but just vocally.
The 3 bars on the chest of this thug stand for the 3 Percenters, who are a fascist paramilitary group. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger experienced similar vicious attacks on his family, tormenting his widowed daughter-in-law and her 2 children. Understand that while these officials stood up to Trump's demands, they are deeply reactionary, extremely religious politicians. In fact, Rusty Bowers testified,
I will not play with laws I swore allegiance to, with any contrived desire towards deflection of my deep foundational desire to follow God's will as I believe He led my conscience to embrace. How else will I ever approach Him in the wilderness of life?
even after all the attacks that Bowers has been put through by Trump, Bowers said he would support Trump again if he were to be the nominee in 2024 because Trump did so much good. But here's the point. What does it tell us about the fascist nature of the Republican Party that they will carry out such thuggish intimidation and even violence against their own to enforce obedience to an outrageous criminal enterprise? The 7 key points succinctly says what and why this is so, quote, because of big changes in this country and the world overall, one part of the ruling class represented by the Republican Party has become fascist. They no longer believe in or feel bound by what have been the norms of democratic capitalist rule in this country, end quote. Failing to take note of this misses the qualitative change that is in the offing should we fail to take up and apply what is in the 7 key points. But this was not all. The January 6 hearing then heard bone-chilling, heart-rending testimony from a black mother and daughter who were election workers from Fulton County, Georgia. What they were subjected to conjures the night riders of the Ku Klux Klan lynchers. Listen to what the daughter, Shay Moss, said.
A lot of threats, wishing death upon me, telling me that, I'll be in jail with my mother, and saying things like, be glad it's 2020 and not 1920. I received a call from my grandmother. This woman is my everything. I've never even heard her or seen her cry ever in my life. And she called me, screaming at the top of her lungs, like, Shay, oh my God, Shay, just freaking me out, saying that there were people at her home and they, they knocked on the door, and of course she opened it and seeing who was there, who it was, and they just started pushing their way through, claiming that they were coming in to make a citizen's arrest. They needed to find me and my mom. They knew we were there. And she was just screaming and didn't know what to do.
Note, these thugs pushed their way into her grandmother's home, and then Trump, in a phone call, called these 2 black women, election workers, hustlers. It is way past time for people to grasp what is unfolding and what is at stake here. People have not woken up to what is going down, including the qualitative change it will bring if half of humanity in this country loses the right to legally obtain a safe, legal abortion, and there isn't a major society-wide fight to reverse that course. And what I have spoken of here, the virulence and the hardening of the fascist movement and the full force of what it will mean for the right of abortion to be overturned, are but two related key features of a truly terrible future. More, it is the whole system that offers no answer. Point 1 of Organizing for an Actual Revolution's 7 key points begins like this, quote, brutal and murderous white supremacy, male supremacy, and other oppressive relations. The deepening crisis in society and the world overall, including the constant wars and continuing destruction of the environment. All this cannot ultimately be resolved in any positive way within the confines of the system that rules in this country and dominates in the world as a whole, the system of capitalism, imperialism, end quote. But this something terrible is not what I want to leave you with. It is not my main point, which is that there is within this terrible trajectory, with all the horror that it concentrates, the potential for something truly emancipating. This is not visible to the naked eye, but it is there, right inside the very extremeness of the situation that masses of people are and will continue to be forced to face, which holds the potential for people to be compelled to question the way things have been and whether they have to stay that way. And for this potential to be realized, everyone who is watching this show, everyone with a heart for humanity, needs to get into, to spread, and to apply Organizing for an Actual Revolution, 7 key points. This is the basic means for carrying out the strategy and the roadmap of something terrible or something truly emancipating. If we take this up and apply this strategy, then, quote, the currently small forces for the revolution that is urgently needed can grow in numbers and strength quickly in a concentrated way and become the powerful force that is needed to lead this revolution, end quote. 2 futures are posed. One is breathing down humanity's neck on multiple fronts with masses of people in this country in a state of paralysis. The other is the emancipating future. And this future depends on us, all who have come to see the basis and the need to change things through taking up the challenge and the charge of Organizing for an Actual Revolution, 7 key points, by waging, quote, ferocious struggle against ways of thinking that keep people chained to this system, winning growing numbers to break with all of that, while also mobilizing masses of people to fight against injustices and outrages that are continually committed under this system, and to stand up against the forces that perpetrate and enforce these injustices and outrages. Spread far and wide the inspiring vision of how much better life could be for the great majority of people if millions of people got behind this revolution and carried it through, making it possible to restructure all of society on a completely different foundation, with a radically different economic system, a mode of production, and emancipating relations among people as spelled out very concretely in the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America, authored by Bob Avakian, end quote.
However you heard about this, I want you to look inside your conscience and your heart and ask yourself, what are you willing to accept and when will you stand up? And if forced motherhood by the state is not a line that moves you to act, you need to ask yourself, yourself some tough questions and reevaluate. So we are calling on everybody to come back into these streets, to stop what you are doing. I don't care what kind of inconvenience it is. Come out here. You know what's inconvenient? Having your life shattered by forced motherhood. And we are the ones who can stop this. There is nobody else. And it feels good to stand up because it matters. It's a beautiful thing. It's a righteous thing. It's how we win a different future. It's how we become a different people. Join us here in these streets. Rise up for abortion rights now.
That was Sunsara Taylor, the co-host of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show and a co-initiator of Rise Up for Abortion Rights this past Tuesday in front of the Supreme Court. Sunsara is here with us tonight via Zoom. Today is Wednesday night. We're recording this the night before the show premieres. Sunsara, how are you doing?
Oh, Andy, it's a very intense time here in Washington, D.C. A lot of tension in the air, but I'm really happy to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, we feel the tension here, too. We're really right down to the wire. If the decision hasn't come down today, it could happen on Friday of this week or early next week. And this is the moment that we've been preparing for. And this is a moment when, at last, we hope, and we're working very hard that people finally act in the way they need to, commensurate with the enormity of this attack. But Sunsara, I wanted to ask you about how should people understand these last few days waiting for the decision to come down? And what is Rise Up for Abortion Rights calling on people to do?
Well, first of all, if a decision in the future of abortion rights in this country has not been issued by the time you're watching this episode, you need to answer the call from Rise Up for Abortion Rights to get into the streets and raise bloody hell and bring everybody you can out to wage a fight now. We need to wage the most powerful fight across this country and here in D.C. to demand the Supreme Court not take this right away, to make them think twice, to make them see the fury and the outrage of people standing up, which will also put us in the strongest position. Because we are going to need to be in a strong position if and when this decision comes down. If it's negative, the more we have fought, the stronger position we will be in to do what will then be necessary, which is to demand and mobilize people to stand up and demand that that decision be reversed. It is illegitimate. It is illegitimate for women to not be able to control their own bodies and their lives, for a court, for the state to take the right to abortion away. That must not stand. And so people are going to need to flood the streets in that event. And they are going to need to rise up and stand up and demand from the federal level that the government take action to guarantee legal abortion on demand and without apology nationwide. Not abortion refuge states, not a few more women being able to travel, but legal, nationwide abortion on demand. That fight is going to be on. So we need to fight as powerfully as we can now while we still have time before the court rules. And even more so when people are shocked, when they're outraged, when they're flooding into the streets and they're agonizing at their homes, they need to see people out in the streets who understand the stakes, calling them forward and preparing and leading them for the struggle that is going to be required to reverse that decision.
I really agree with you, Sunsara. Now is the time to people to act, and it's never too late to fight against this kind of injustice, this kind of tremendous, this is a huge change in the whole tenor and culture and law of this country for half of humanity. So I wanted to us to move on, and earlier this week, Rise Up for Abortion Rights sponsored some very moving and significant actions by some young women who acted with more courage and conviction and understanding than many people who've been involved in these movements over decades. And it should be an inspiration for people. And they had an understanding and reflected that in their actions for what this is actually going to mean. Maybe you could just introduce this for our viewers, Sunsara.
Yeah, well, for the most part, I want to let everybody, I know you want to too, we want to let people see these young women speak for themselves, but just to give people some context. Back in December, when the Supreme Court heard the case that now is pending and could rip away women's right to abortion, one of the judges, I refuse to call them justices, one of the judges on the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, who is a Christian fascist fanatic, she essentially said, what's the big deal about forcing women to have babies. It doesn't have to shape their whole lives. They could just drop them off at a fire station or a hospital. They could just be forced to have the baby and give it up. And so these young women and girls came down on a bus from New York. They came from other places. They dressed up in bloody pants. They put their hair in pigtails. They did tear-stained, streaked mascara and bound their arms and their mouths silenced. And they carried baby dolls, and they did a procession through Amy Coney Barrett's neighborhood, which is a stronghold of Christian fascist theocratic social base, right to her home, and they dropped these baby dolls off. And what's the big deal? They embodied this. So I want you to watch their procession, hear their voices, and then afterwards they did testimony at the Supreme Court, spoke out about what motivated them and what was in their hearts and what are their fears that they're facing. So I think we should just watch it from them.
We are here at Justice Amy Coney Barrett's house today with our arms tied, with our mouths covered, holding dolls, because this is what Amy's America looks like. Children will be forced to give birth to children. Women will be silenced. Women will be invalidated. Women will be told they are less than. Women will be told they are inferior. And that is not okay. We cannot let that happen. So all of you who say you are pro-choice, get up and say it out loud. Get up, take to the streets and stay. Because you cannot let this happen to your sisters, to your daughters, to your mothers. You can't let this future happen to us. It's not fair.
Abortion rights for abortion rights, rise up!
You may look at us and think we look insane for putting on bloody pants and putting mascara on our faces. Putting on bloody pants and putting mascara running down our faces, binding our hands, taking baby dolls to the steps of Amy Coney Barrett, putting tape over our mouths. This will be the reality of America if Roe is overturned.
I don't want to live in that reality. I don't want to live in a reality where 170 million people and their bodies are deemed inferior. I came to Amy Barrett's house today because when I was 13, I was sexually assaulted. And I was not given emergency contraceptive when I went in for my rape kit. And my biggest fear was an unwanted pregnancy than facing my rapist in court. Had I fallen pregnant, this whole bullshit that Amy has with the safe haven, that would not have saved me the trauma from what I experienced. That would not have saved me from the trauma of childbirth. And to that, I say, fuck her and her bullshit. Fuck the state. Fuck the legislators. Rise up for abortion rights.
That was the young people doing a procession outside Amy Coney Barrett's house and then speaking out at the Supreme Court about what is at stake. A couple days later, I was able to talk to two of these young people about why they did what they did, where they found the courage for this. And as it turns out, one of them had been a very key part of the disruption at the Liberty's WNBA game at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, which made news all over the place, got a standing ovation. We'll show a little bit of the footage of the basketball WNBA disruption, and then my interview with these young people about where they found the courage and why they're in this fight. Like, describe, right when you're sitting in the NBA, the WNBA, you're watching them on the court, you're knowing any second your moment is going to come. How are you feeling? What was going through your head? And then what happened that made you jump out of your seat and get out on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I was shaking. I was kind of wishing that I had backed out of it. Not fully. I was not going to leave, but I was shaking because this is not something that people do. You know, everyone was there for a basketball game and there were security guards everywhere. But I saw the rest of the people I was there with get up and start doing their thing. So me and the woman next to me, we ripped off our dress, threw it behind us, and we ran onto the court wearing our bloody outfits. And I just let that emotion drive me. I let the shakiness and the adrenaline drive me, and I just kept running past everyone. You know, we all think that. We all have that feeling of like, well, I don't like attention. I don't like people being mad at me. I don't like breaking the rules. So I definitely support this message, but I can't do that. That's what I think. That's what everyone thinks. But someone has to do it, you know, and one person has so much power. You and the people you know have so much power. There is nothing you can't accomplish with your own voice.
Love, I want to ask you, because you're nodding, but also, what did you think when you saw what she did?
When I actually saw that video, I didn't even know that my friend Brianna was in the video at first. I was watching the video, and it was so inspiring to me, because I was like, you know, this is something that is, it's a different way. You know, it's not just the same thing that I've seen done again and again, which is also very important, but being able to see strategies used in different ways to send this message that abortion rights are so freaking important and needed. On the WNBA court, you know, seeing all these people who were in the crowd not expecting for any of this to happen and joining in the chanting of abortion rights and things like that. It inspired me so much that at that moment I felt like, you know, like a rush of energy had returned and excitement had returned, that, you know, yes, there are so many people that are doing so many amazing things, and we have to keep doing this. There are people who want this. There are people who care about this. And it really, I think, also made it much easier for me to say, like, in an instant that, yeah, I'm coming to Washington, D.C., and obviously we're going to go and, you know, have blood-stained pants and do whatever we got to do in order to fight as much as we can, you know? Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say directly to Brianna? Maybe you already have, but about what you felt when you learned it was your friend who was on the court?
First off, coolest thing ever. Like, whoa. Second off, like, thank you for being one of those people who inspired the hell out of me. And I mean, you inspire me all the time, but it was so cool to see someone that I know doing such an amazing thing. And yeah, I'm sure you inspire so many people. I've heard from other people who I didn't even know who said that they saw videos of the WNBA game being passed around their schools and stuff, you know? So it definitely made a reach. And, you know, you're making a difference. So many people that are out here, you know, you might think you're not doing that much, but you're making a difference. There are people who are seeing this. You are inspiring people. You are helping with this fight, you know? And so thank you for that.
All right, Sunsara, it was great to see all those young people doing what they did. Now, on Tuesday, Rise Up for Abortion Rights was out in front of the Supreme Court. We want to show some of that. Do you want to just introduce it, tell people what they're going to see?
That's right, Andy. We have been, Rise Up for Abortion Rights has been holding rallies every single morning of a potential decision from the court. We've been holding rallies outside the Supreme Court. We're going to show you a little bit of what went on Tuesday, this last Tuesday, where a young woman, Devana, who is part of Rise Up for Abortion Rights, and another person did a civil disobedience. You'll see them chained to the Supreme Court fence. You will see Araceli Herrera, who flew up from Texas. She's been part of Rise Up for Abortion Rights from the very beginning. She has a very powerful testimony, and now she delivers it in front of the court. Guido, who carried out civil disobedience a couple weeks ago and has been a very bold voice in this movement. And towards the end, after a few more voices, you're going to see a video message of solidarity from Brother Cornel West.
I'm standing in front of the Supreme Court, and while I did not seek this battle, I will not back down, because a society led by religious zealots, including Christian fundamentalism, is a horror. I know. I used to be one. Backwards thinking and an outdated ideology should not overrule medical science, but this is the future they want for us, and it is one I refuse to accept.
Yes.
And I am here representing Metropolitan AME Church. There's a war going on in the streets. There's a war going on against women's bodies. And when I think about the fact that this world is turning backwards, there are so many things that the government, that those who say they love God are doing to hurt our bodies. I am disturbed. So I wanted to be here to bear witness resistance with my collar on, even in this heat, because I'm representing God, I'm representing my daughter, I'm representing my future granddaughters, my great-great-granddaughters, I'm representing all the black women who have bodies who have been used to incubate babies back in slavery. Our bodies were made to produce more free labor, and that's what this world is turning back to. I am concerned about what is going on. I'm concerned about how people of God are using the scriptures in a way that is violent against people that look like me, people with black and brown bodies, with women. Our bodies, what we do with our bodies between God and me. You can't come and tell me what to do with it, and we have to do what we can. We have to stand up against this turning Roe and Wade back.
This court has undertaken to assault the bodies of the women of this country. They are in treasonous collaboration with the state of Texas in an attack on women's rights. They have therefore lost any legitimacy. They have placed themselves in rebellion against the people of this country. And it is the sacred duty of the fathers, of the mothers, of the people of this country to rise in nonviolent rebellion against this traitor court. I'm calling on America to rise in nonviolent rebellion, to shut down the function of this government until our rights are respected.
With my dear brother Carl, my dear sister Sunsara, and the others who understand the intimate relation between the attack on women's rights, women's control over their bodies, the attack on poor people, the attack on black people, the attack on indigenous people, the attack on immigrants and brown people, so that there's a solidarity bringing us together against an escalating fascism in the country. And at this particular moment, we must be in the streets, not just hit the streets, stay in the streets. And some of us, again, must indeed go to jail this Thursday in front of the Supreme Court to make sure that we defend the right of women, no matter what color they are, to live lives of control over their bodies, of dignity and decency, and always making the larger connection between the struggle against escalating neo-fascism in the country in the various forms that it takes. So please understand, it has always been everyday people in the streets putting pressure on unjust status quos. The Democratic Party still remains milquetoast. The Republican Party is more and more captive to the escalating neo-fascism. But no milquetoast neoliberalism going to do it. We must have folk willing to put collective pressure in the streets, in the jails, on the status quo in place.
Today, the lives of millions of people are in the hands of these so-called justices. In a world without Roe, this is what it looks like. This is our reality for millions of women across the world. That's right. In a post-Roe world, people will die. I could die. These handcuffs will be replaced by the laws which bound our bodies to this government's will.
I was raped when I was young. I have dreams. I want to be biologist. I was extremely poor. They raped me and I couldn't finish the college. I couldn't finish anything because the doctor, when I tell in my school, I was raped. I don't wanna this child because I am very poor. I am in the school. They say no, you don't have right to get an abortion. So I have to have the child. I love my son, but I have to carry chains all my life. I don't want other young women in the United States suffer like I suffer. They don't carry chains like I am. in chains.
There is a movement in this country, a patriarchal, woman-hating, dark ages fascist movement that has been furious that women ever got out of their place, ever rose up, ever challenged tradition, ever dared to consider themselves full human beings and won the right to abortion. And this is why abortion is under attack. And right now, we are living through a turning point in history. We are living through a watershed moment. And we need to wake up, because people are going to ask and people are going to look, where were you when the highest court in the land and the most powerful country in the world said openly that they are going to legally subjugate women, have the state hijack their bodies, unleash vigilantes and bounty hunters to shame them, hunt them down, surveil them, drag them in, lock them up, put them in prison, and force millions of women to have babies they did not want. If you want to have a child, if you are ready to have a child, that is a beautiful thing. But if you are forced to have a child against your will, that is a form of enslavement. And that is what we are facing, sisters and brothers and beautiful people. And we have got to bust a move in this country. I want to tell people, if you are sitting at home while this happens, you are part of the problem. You are giving your approval. You are condoning this assault. I don't want to hear anybody tell themselves, there's nothing I can do. I'm just one person. That's bullshit. It's an excuse, and it lets them win. We are the majority. We are up against a powerful force. Yes, this court is powerful. Yes, the Christian fascists who have captured the federal legislature are powerful. Yes, the state legislatures they have captured are passing bans that are shattering women's lives now, and they are powerful. But they are not all powerful, and they are not gods. They might claim to be on a mission from God, but they are not gods. We have power too. We have power too, but we have to exercise our power. We have to come into these streets. We need to reach into the hearts, into the minds, into the conscience, into the souls of people across this country, and unleash the fury of women and girls that has been suppressed, the fury that women and girls are choking on. Don't let yourself believe what they tell us, that we live in some civilized society where women and girls have achieved their equality. No, we live in a society that has so silenced and shamed women that they don't speak about what is done to them, that they carry their bruises and their scars as if they're something that the woman has to hide. They are shamed when they walk into the abortion clinics. They are shamed if they choose to take control over their lives, and they are silent about it. But there is a fury that is suppressed in the hearts and the minds of women and girls that needs to come out in these streets right now. It is powerful. We have power. And all people who love justice, I don't care if you're white, you're black, you're immigrant, you're from a different part of the world, you speak a different language, I don't care if you're a man, I don't care what gender you are, we need to be in these streets together. We need to stop the Supreme Court from overturning Roe. We need to take our power back. We have a future to win. There is a bright and glorious, a liberated future that we can forge in these streets, beating them back and becoming different people, standing together, standing up right now. There is not just a nightmare to avert, there is something to become and to win. So I'm calling on you now. Not next week, not when it's convenient. Right now, when history is being decided, to join us in these streets, to rearrange your lives, to come out here and stand with others, to bring everybody you know, to donate, to disrupt back home wherever you are, to be part of stopping the Supreme Court from taking away abortion rights and slamming women backwards and dragging history backwards. It is in our hands. Rise up for abortion rights. Rise up for abortion rights. Rise up for abortion rights. Rise up for abortion rights.
Sunsara, that was a very powerful call that should stand for the next few days in terms of what people need to do. I want to just say two things. One, what we've covered on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show on this battle for abortion rights over the last 3 months is unparalleled anywhere. The segments that we've broken out on our website, YouTube, the RevComs, are very important. They're in-depth analysis and firsthand testimony that's absolutely stirring. Or go watch the whole episodes from starting in late February. And the second thing I want to say is to stay tuned to the social media of the RevComs and go to revcom.us and come to our YouTube channel over the next several days till the decision comes down. We're going to do a dispatch whenever it comes down, and then we're going to get into this in depth in our next show. So with that, Sunsara, I want to, for myself, say to you that, and everybody here in the RNL crew, stay strong and keep fighting, and let's just hope that the people hear our message and come out in their hundreds of thousands and millions and not let this go down.
That's right, Andy. I'm so glad to be talking with you, and we'll be in touch. We're going to be on this.
All right, stay strong.
Right now, there's a huge fight going on to prevent the overturning of the right to abortion, and indeed, by the time you see this, it may be gone.
Get in the street!
For months, Rise Up for Abortion Rights has been at the forefront of this battle.
Rise up for abortion rights! Rise up for abortion rights!
While all too many other groups, from the big reproductive rights organizations that are tied to the Democratic Party to the freelance wokesters looking to run a small concession stand within that, they've been attacking Rise Up, focused on getting ready for a post-Roe America, adjusting and capitulating to the horror. And a lot of their arguments have been answered on this show and at revcom.us. But one big slander they use is that the RevComs, who work within and who help to initiate Rise Up for Abortion Rights, are part of a cult around Bob Avakian. So let's speak to that. First, this is ignorant. B.A. Bob Avakian uses the scientific method of basing himself on reality to make a highly rational case about why this system must be overthrown, why a new revolutionary system must be put in its place, and why in particular the emancipation of women is a driving force within that struggle. He's written numerous articles on this particular fight around the Roe v. Wade ruling and the right to abortion itself. Now, it's obvious that these politicos, these hucksters, they don't agree with this, but they won't put out their arguments in an open debate. And just using the scare word cult, this is not a rational, science-based argument. This is a resort to demagogy, and it's a confession that they don't have any serious refutations for a position that they've decided will threaten the space that they've carved out for themselves. Now, for those of you who don't have a vested interest in keeping people from joining this fight, you need to ask yourselves, what do you really think? Dig into it, compare and contrast. Who's right on this question? Bob Avakian and the RevComs who follow him? Or these wannabe movement big shots and identity politics entrepreneurs? And is it really acceptable to step outside of or to attack the only broad-based group that is waging this struggle and the only one with a strategic orientation of defeating this attack, just because some people are using scary name-calling against some of the people in this group, including against Sunsara Taylor, who's the co-host of this show and who's played a leading role in joining with others from different perspectives to initiate and to lead Rise Up? Just who is that thinking about? Is it thinking about the masses of women, the future generation of girls, and what they're going to be facing? Or is it thinking about what's easiest for you? Don't give in to what they say when what they say is so wrong and so truly harmful. You need to be, and you can be, better than that, especially in this crucial hour. Now, of course, Bob Avakian is about more than any particular battle, as important as this one may be. He's developed a whole new communism, building on and in some significant ways going beyond and even rupturing with what was done before. And this too is based on a scientific approach, probing deeply into the previous socialist revolutions and revolutionary movements, not being swayed by what everybody knows, or more accurately, what they think they know. If you're among the many who've taken up this struggle for abortion rights, but you're still learning about all of this, if you want to know the deep down cause of the problem, where does this patriarchal oppression and degradation of women come from? and whether and how we can get rid of it. Yes, how we can uproot it, get rid of it, and build a society in which never again does a woman know what it's like to walk down a dark street in fear. This is possible. And don't you owe it to yourself and to the people all over the world who are trying to break these chains on the half of humanity that's female to look into the work of the person on the planet who's gone the deepest into understanding this? Now, as for those people who think that they can intimidate you from doing that, from getting into this, by using that scare word cult, Ardea Skybreak, a biologist and an advocate of the new communism, she posed this to such people in general. What's your program? What's your strategy? What's your solution to the problem of the recurrent horrors generated by this system? And well, if you don't have much to say about any of that, if you don't have much serious substance to offer in terms of strategic plans, in terms of programs for systemic change, then maybe you should have the decency to shut up for a while and get to doing some serious work yourself to at least more thoroughly explore and engage the substance of the work done over a number of decades by someone who is in fact proposing a substantial, multi-layered, radically different, and yet coherent, scientifically grounded in reality, vision, and plan for the future. You don't have to agree, but it is unconscionable, in my opinion, not to seriously delve into this work. Unless, of course, you just don't care. Now, applying that same spirit to this battle, we ask you to ask these wokesters, ask these political appendages of the Democratic Party this. What is their analysis of where this oppression comes from? Why did they think it still's not been uprooted? What accounts for the fact that today, all over the world, women are being slammed back, and this oppression is getting worse by leaps and by bounds, including through ripping away the hard-won right to abortion? How did they intend to wage the huge but possible struggle necessary to abolish this oppression? There's more to say about cults versus science, and we will in future episodes. And BA has also answered these charges himself in 2 articles at revcom.us. Bob Avakian answers accusations of cult, ignorance, and cowardice. And Bob Avakian speaks to cult, a ridiculous, ignorant, and irresponsible accusation. We are applying a scientific method and approach to understanding and transforming the world to emancipate humanity. Now, this is also an insulting personal attack. I'm not some blind, unthinking cult member, and neither are any of the other RevComs. Based on Avakian's new communism, we struggle to understand and to transform the world in an emancipating way, not with closed-minded, dogmatic adherence to religious articles and faith that have no basis in reality, but with a scientific spirit, determination, passion for a better world, and strong-ass opinions. We're curious, inquisitive, and we're hardcore revolutionaries who refuse to bow down to people who want to leave the masses of humanity enchained to the soul-crushing and people-devouring system. So get into this. Don't let any of these phonies and worse scare and peer pressure you away from digging seriously into what humanity needs. Raise your questions, your differences, substance, and let's together work to change the world.
Hi, I'm Prose, part of the RNL team, and it was great to connect and hear from many of you on last Friday's Zoom call with the host of the show, Andy Zee. We want to bring the audience of this show together again in the future to build a revolutionary community of people, learning and transforming together to change the world. So keep an eye out for announcements for future meetings. I wanted to close out tonight's show by emphasizing that everyone who's watching has a role to play. If you recognize the importance of what this show brings every single week, be a part of growing this show. Share this show to your networks, Facebook groups, Reddits, reading circles. Text the link to this episode to your sister, your justice-loving coworker. Get this show everywhere. Organize your own watch parties for the premiere each week, every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Discuss the show with your friends. And your engagement matters. Like this episode, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Leave a comment below about what stood out to you, what questions you have, and what you want to see on next week's show. And finally, this show cost money to produce. From the lighting to the editing equipment to the lovely volunteers sweating all night to put this together. Donate and become a Patreon so we can continue to do this and build our team and capacity to do even more. Patreon.com/therevcoms is where you want to go. And volunteer with us. If you're a filmmaker, an editor, a graphic designer, reach out to us at therevcoms on all social media or at therevcoms@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you next week.
So that brings us to the end of the 107th episode of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. This is going to be a momentous week for the battle for abortion rights. We need lots of people coming out into the streets, whatever the decision is, and we'll be covering that. So stay tuned to our social media at the RevComs. Come to this channel at YouTube, the RevComs, and go to revcom.us to stay in touch with what we're doing. Also go to the website and to the social media of Rise Up for Abortion Rights. And we'll see you on June 30th, next Thursday night, same place as we are tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. New York Time. And stay strong.